Oh, are we filming? Celtics season is done. We've lost the Miami Heat in 6 games in the Eastern Conference Finals. I'm actually not that sad. After we went down 0-2, I had kind of just realized we were going to lose this series, so I've been mentally preparing myself for a long time. That being said, I do have 5 hot take reactions to this season and this series, freshly cooked, straight out of the oven. Let's get to them. Number 1, Tatum and Brown are good enough to be the best 2 players on a championship team. They showed enough this postseason to prove 2 things. Number 1, they're not ready yet. Number 2, they are absolutely capable of being the best 2 players on a championship team. I'm still convinced Jason Tatum is a top 10 player currently, guys who are playing right now and who are healthy. I think he averaged something like 25, 10, and 5 during these playoffs. And while he did turn the ball over a lot, this was his first time sort of auditioning in that superstar role where he was going to be the lead ball handler. He was going to have all the shots, all the pressure. He's 22 years old, and he averaged 25, 10, and 5 while playing good defense. He's going to be a superstar. He's just not quite ready yet. Both him and Brown need to work on their consistency. They have good games and bad games, but Tatum started to unlock his playmaking, which is one of the final frontiers of his game that has been underdeveloped. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with them not being ready at this age. They're getting really valuable experience. They're learning how bad it sucks to lose, which will drive them to improve. You're crazy if you don't think that Tatum, when he's 26, and Brown, when he's 27, are going to be a serious problem for any team in the NBA. Number 2, Kemba Walker is a $30 million Lou Williams. Sure, I liked the Kemba Walker signing. He's a great dude. I felt like he could do all the things that Kyrie did without any of the baggage. Unfortunately, one of the things Kyrie could do was destroy us defensively, and Kemba does that as well. Not for lack of trying, but he's too small, and he's going to get picked on. And every time we make it to the playoffs, he's going to get picked on. Part of me, when we signed him, was like, why not just run Smart as our point guard? And I feel that way more than ever. I think next year our best lineup is Smart, Brown, Hayward, Tatum, and then at the 5, some combination of Tice, Williams, whatever other center fodder that we can pick up. With Kemba coming off the bench, playing about 30 minutes a game in a shoot everything he touches role. Get used to that. That is his future on this team in best case scenario. Now, I don't think that's going to happen because I just think these ridiculous contracts and egos that are attached to them. Brad Stevens is such a weak dude. He's not going to stick Kemba in that 6th man role, but that's really what Kemba Walker is to me. He's a 6th man. He's a guy who can shoot, usually pretty well, and that's really it. He's nice, he's charming, and he can shoot. But honestly, like, he killed us defensively all through these playoffs and had horrible turnovers. He's not a playmaker, which is crazy to think that your point guard, your lead ball handler, can't make plays for others. But honestly, like, his assist to turnover ratio is pretty bad. And I don't trust him to make plays for others. So I would rather just have him get used to being future 6th man of the year, coming off the bench, playing 28 to 30 minutes a game, shooting every single time he touches it, not worrying about passing because he stinks at it, not worrying about having to get picked on defensively because he'll be coming off the bench. That's what we need him to do. He's a $30 million Lou Williams. Honestly, I don't think the contracts quite match up, but I would trade Kemba Walker for Chris Paul straight up in a heartbeat. I know Chris Paul is old and has one of the most horrific contracts in the NBA. Don't care. Chris Paul can at least play defense and make plays for others. And honestly, that's what this team needs. Number 3, if the Celtics win a championship in the next 10 years, it will be despite Brad Stevens, not because of him. There are a handful of coaches in the NBA that can either elevate you to a championship or prevent you from winning one. Stevens is neither. Right now, people are super emotional. Fire Brad Stevens, fire Brad Stevens. That's crazy. But like earlier this year, people were talking about Brad Stevens, top 3 coach in the NBA. He's incredible. I also think that's crazy. I think he's somewhere in the middle. If you look at coaches that can elevate you to a championship, I think that's a very small category. You're talking about Nick Nurse. You're talking about Spoelstra. Used to be Greg Popovich. Maybe Steve Kerr. If you talk about coaches that can prevent you from winning a championship, Scott Brooks, Alvin Gentry, Brett Brown, R.I.P. Jim Boland. Everybody else in the NBA, in my opinion, is in the meh category. They help teams. They hurt teams. They aren't the difference maker. They bring some things to the table. They take other things off the table. And that's Brad Stevens to me. He knows how to coach up scrubs. He doesn't know how to handle superstar. He's a great defensive mind. He sucks at timeouts. His rotations are weird. His offensive strategies are consistently disappointing. And his emotions are underwhelming. So that's it. If we ever win, it will not be because of Brad Stevens, but it also won't be not because of him. He's not going to prevent us from winning, but he's not going to lead us to a championship. He's fine. He's okay. Whatever. Number 4, the Celtics lost these playoffs because of the Sacramento Kings. Sacramento Kings, God, I hate you. I hope an earthquake opens up and swallows your team into the earth. Let me explain. When we owned their draft pick, it was predicted to be a top 5 pick. Instead, they decided to not suck for exactly 1 year, just long enough to screw our draft pick before returning to the cellar of the NBA the very next year, where they're going to reside for eternity. This left the pick in a tie with Miami for spot 13, 14 in last year's NBA draft. So a coin was flipped, and the Heat won that coin flip and took Tyler Hero, who the Celtics were clearly intending to draft with their pick. That's life. But if Hero was on the Celtics this year instead of the Heat, we win this series. I truly believe that. Number 5, as painful as it seems to be for Celtics fans to admit, this was a successful season. I don't prescribe to this whole notion that only one team a year can have a successful season, the team that wins the championship. That's insane to me, that everybody is playing this game where everyone is wildly disappointed except for one team. I just don't buy it. Of course, the ultimate goal is to win a championship, but it's just not realistic for a lot of teams. And I'm not saying that this team couldn't have won a championship. They could have. But you have to be somewhat practical about this. The Celtics were the 5th or the 6th best team all year long, and we made it to the Final 4. And you can really only make a convincing argument that 2 teams in the NBA had a better season than us, the Miami Heat and the Los Angeles Lakers. That's a successful year. One of those teams, the Heat, are the hottest team in the NBA for the past month or so. People still aren't giving them the proper respect that they deserve. They swept the Pacers. They basically swept the Bucks, and they handled us really easily. They have been incredible over the last month or so, and I think they have a legitimate shot at beating the Lakers as well. You know, it's really difficult to win when you have $60 million tied up in 2 players that are just gimpy. Kemba had his knee issues coming into the bubble, and he looked like booty for most of these playoffs. Obviously, Gordon Hayward hurt himself in the first game of the playoffs and returned for that last 3 or 4 game stretch, but really was just looked like a dude who really hurt his ankle and hadn't played basketball in 4 or 5 weeks. But all that being said, our best 2 players are 23 and 22 years old. They have loads of playoff experience. We've got Grant Williams and Rob Williams, who both look like they could be nice bench players. And we have a few picks in this year's draft to hopefully get a very poor replacement of Tyler Hero. Just somebody off the bench that can shoot, basically. So I still think, despite the pains of losing in this year's playoffs and what could have been, being able to beat a Toronto Raptors team that was better than us all year and they were healthy in the playoffs without Gordon Hayward is a monumental achievement. And yes, we probably should have beaten the Miami Heat, but the Miami Heat are playing incredible basketball right now. And even though Gordon Hayward came back, he was still kind of a shell of himself. So all things considered, I think the Celtics actually had a successful season, and that maybe in a few days or weeks when the pain has worn off, other Celtics fans will be able to see that as well and get ready for the upcoming season. This will probably be my last NBA video in a while, which is back to books for me. It's been stressful doing all these NBA pods, but fun at the same time. I hope you guys enjoyed them. Maybe I'll do one when the draft rolls around. We'll see. Until then, see you next time on Ransom Reviews.